it will be interesting in this today's session. I think I'll also get a chance to hear it back from Shashank as we go forward. So we have Kiran here, Venki here, my erstwhile boss, and I think a mentor for me all the time. And Gaurav, I think we've just met a few days back, and I think it appears that we know each other well. Venkata is also trying to join us. I think he's been in and off, on and off. And of course, Shashank will also be there. So I think what I will request in the first, so the intent is that in the world we used to live in earlier, long back, was like that tech was, CTO was supposed to know only tech. And there was a bit of a thought process when you meet the business, you will say, what is the requirement, I'll get it built. And in today's situation where business and tech is so intertwined, that I think at times I find that tech guy would know more about business than business guy will know about business, right? Because the business guys will know from a digital perspective, the deep insight, what is going to happen, process controls, all of that. And of course, the business guys also know about technology much more, right? They will intervene in every, I think banks have more CTOs than the CTOs that need, right? So everybody knows about technology enough. So it's a very different world. But I think critical part is that with so much of cybersecurity and risk management issues coming in the market, what is the role of CISO and CTO, and how do they move from there? And personal side, I can tell you that I used to work as a CTO in DCB, and I can tell you that a lot of things I learned was there, where I think everybody would get the CTOs involved in the business, and things will change, and we get involved in the process controls, all of that. So I think what we will do in this session is largely to learn from the leadership here. I know there's a bit of constraints of various leadership team here because they're in and out. I'll ensure that we stay on time and close early. But I think we'll start with the CISO role first, because I think, Kiran, you're in minority. There are more guys on the other side. So maybe, Kiran, I'll start with you. In the current, so, and maybe you can quickly introduce us as well, and maybe spend maybe 2-3 minutes on talking about your perspective on the role of CISO in the current realm.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Samir, for having me on this esteemed panel and a platform. So I'm Kiran Belsekar. I'm part of the Bandhan Life, which is erstwhile Aegon Life Insurance. So I take care of the CISO function and the tech governance as well. So interesting question, Samir, I should say. The role of Chief Information Security Officers is evolving significantly in the context of digital transformation. The key changes, if you ask me, are like in terms of the strategic leadership. The CISOs are increasingly involved in shaping up the overall business strategy, ensuring that the considerations are integrated into the digital transformation initiatives from the outset, following the security by design principles. CISOs are required to directly report to the board now as per the regulatory mandates as well, highlight the risk and bringing in important matters to the attention of effective decision making as well. So data-driven governance and the risk management is I should say, the need of the hour. The second change I should talk about is from a business enablement perspective. So rather than earlier been seen as a barrier to innovation, CISOs are now expected to enable the business agility by implementing the security measures that really support the digital business models and the technologies perspective. So CISOs, if you ask me, is must work closely with the other C-suite executives as well to ensure that the holistically approach to the security that aligns to the business objectives, and specifically to the CTO role, because that is where the partnership really going to matters. The other one is in terms of adaptability to the new threats. So CISO must stay ahead of the emerging threats, and in terms of such as like targeting the cloud services, remote work, work from anywhere, hybrid working, and also from the advanced persistent threats as well from an APT perspective that can really exploit the new digital landscape. That's why the modern CISOs are expected to advocate for and invest into the advanced security technologies such as AI and machine learning, which can really provide a proactive threat detection and a response capabilities. So overall, the role of CISO is becoming more dynamic and integrated with the business processes, requiring balance technical expertise, strategic thinking, and collaborative skills.
Oh, fantastic. I think, Kiran, this is useful. Just one quick question. You said the current CISO, but you also transitioned into the current CISO from the previous role, right? You were also CISO earlier. So just one quick question, that how did you transition to the new world, right?
So it's a different thought. While you also need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's a process mindset which you really need to think upon. So maybe having from a CTO, also playing a role of a CTO earlier, then CISO, and continuing as a CISO. I think you have seen all parts of the business and really been embedded into it. So I think that really helped me as evolving into and more connected to the business. So I think more has evolved from more from a technology function. It has also evolved more connected to the business. So more you are connected to business, more you are adopted, more you are acknowledged into your roles and responsibilities, and that really helps the rest of the functions in terms of the rest of the team as well. Because end of the day, I still remember earlier it was been looked as a barrier to the innovation, but exactly is like I should take an analogy of car airbags. When do you really need them? You don't need them after the accident. You need them during the accident. So should be your security by design as well. So you need to have design your security like in car airbags, I should say.
No, thank you. Thank you. I think this is a good analogy, but I think a lot of times I also felt that CISO रोक ही लेता था, आगे बढ़ते ही नहीं था, right? So I think this is good change, enabler for business. Maybe I'll take a question to my previous boss and my mentor, Venki. So Venki, you have been, I mean, maybe you can give a quick introduction about yourself and then talk about from a growth perspective, how do you see this growth evolving, right? Because you have been in leadership roles all through and now sitting on board. So how do you see these roles evolving and where is it going?
So, Samir, first of all, my apologies. My video is not coming, and I don't know why. My camera is on, but we'll leave it at that. Quick introduction: 34 years, out of which 28 years in banking. I have probably done 3-4 functions together, right from human resources to technology to operation to BIU per se, and have some exposure to the board and board committees, etc. And my previous organization where I worked for about 18 years was DCB, and prior to that, I worked with Standard Chartered, ANZ, all that. Now, in terms of your question, what is evolving and what needs to change given the CTO and CISO's role? Clearly, I see that today the CISO and CTO are part of the ITSC, which is an RBI framework, which is an information technology strategy team. So there is a fair amount of exposure that they have over there, and the way they position themselves, the kind of questions that are asked, they need to be a lot more smarter and savvy in terms of when they are dealing with risk and compliance and cybersecurity pieces. On the other side, the board, when it is a full board as such, they are also aware what kind of risk that they need to undertake, where their responsibility starts and where does the responsibility end. And to that extent, their expectations are very clearly cut out for the CTO and CISO. And that is evolving, major. Third is regulator. Earlier the CTO, and Samir, I don't remember whether you interacted directly with the regulator in your earlier role or avatar. But today a CTO can't afford not to have an direct interaction with the regulator. And then those conversations are very intense and in-depth conversation. And they are talking about having access to data. For example, a very small minor example I would give. If you do a DR and say my DR was successful just on the risk part, they are not happy with just that. They want us to tell them that exactly how many transactions you did when you moved to DR, what were you doing in a DC. Similarly, if there is a cyber threat incident, they would want the CTO and the team to know exactly what's happening. The last bit of it is that there are multi-level agencies which are there in the system, and each one has its own set of expectation. The CTO and the CISO both have to be both strategic as well as hands-on, because if they don't have data on the micro level, they won't be able to decide and represent themselves at a macro level. I see that changing big time, and I think over a period of time, some of it we have seen those changes happening, some are in progress, and I think newer technology, newer challenges, complexity will bring more challenges, or more changes rather.
Yeah. And challenges though anyway, lage hue hain,
Right.
it's like. So I'm sure the hackers also have a CTO, CISO roles, right? How to hack and how to control.
In fact, I would say, Samir, I don't want to take others' time, but since you mentioned about hackers, the kind of coordination and the collaboration hackers and the syndicates have, I think that collaboration, we will talk about when, probably as we progress in the discussion, but I want to talk about it a little later on that aspect as well, Samir.
No, perfect. So, Gaurav, in your role, you run Northern Arc's technology, but you also run a lot of partnership, which is where I think Northern Arc is very famous for, and so many partnerships, so much of distributed data, and then so many regulations out there. And digital is like at very best in your environment. So, I think what's the role in your organization of a CTO, and maybe you would want to put up a bit of focus on CISO as well, but maybe your role and how is it evolving?
Sure. So, Samir, first of all, thanks a lot for including me in this panel. So, this is a great opportunity to interact with industry participants. So, to your specific point, right, regarding the partnership business that we do, and we interact with a lot of fintechs and who further basically go on and interact with the consumers, right? So, if you see, there are multiple layers in this and multiple technology solutions which interact with each other. Now, what we have very consciously, and I really liked earlier what was said, which is like cars with airbags and all, right? So what we have really agreed within CISO and myself is that we will put the uh, guardrails in place, right? Which means basically definition of a policy. So guardrails are basically nothing but policy which we have to adhere to, and that's the role of CISO. CISO is well conversant and up to date with all the master directions that come out, ISO, SOC 2, all kinds of frameworks which exist, which will make sure that there is enough protection while we are building stuff, right? So that's the policy part of it, the first part of it, right? Now, the role that CTO plays is to make sure. So first I'm talking about Northern Arc, and then I'll get into a little bit about the partners also, because that's just the extension of what we do internally, right? So once the policy is done, the role of CTO is really to ensure that we implement those expectations, whatever is laid out in these various policies, right? So that's where the coordination comes into play. And we have, as in basis what we see in terms of audits, etc., we have a very good understanding that CISO understands business, and we in the engineering team understands the relevance of all these security measures that have to be put in place. So that's the implementation, the second phase of it, right? And the third phase is audit, which could be external and internal both. Now, we learned a lot while implementing this at Northern Arc itself, right? Now, in September of 2022, I guess, there were these digital lending guidelines which were rolled out by RBI, right? And which ensured and which really helped us push the agenda of security across our partners. Because then there was no escape from the fact that security and these things could be taken up later while the business progresses, because now this becomes a regulatory requirements. And as a regulatory entity, we have to enforce that our partners really comply to all the regulations. Now, so to do that, what we do is really, again, if you look at the partnership, right, there are three phases really. The first is onboarding, then you have the business life cycle, and then the offboarding, right? So now at each level, we have a consensus between CISO and CTO, and even the compliance and legal, because they are the ones who audit the third parties. So at first up, when we start doing business with any digital entity, there is a clear set of vendor guidelines. So it could either be from a business standpoint or the services that we take from vendors, right? So we go through the checklist. So at the time of onboarding, we do background checks. We see if they have had any compliance issues or not, as we would do any kind of checks for the people we are lending, basically, right? So we do a thorough check, and then only the vendor is onboarded, whether for business or services. So that's the first part, and the framework, as I said, is outlined very clearly. The second piece is, while we are going through the business life cycle, right, which is business and services, we agree at a contractual level that there will be a set frequency in which either a third party on our behalf or we will audit. And that's set in stone in contract. So there is no deviation from that. And that ensures that through the life cycle, there is no deviation happening from the basic minimum requirements that we agree while we onboard the vendor. The third and the final phase is really when we choose, let's say, to move out with a vendor for whatever reasons. At the time of contract, we make sure now, and this is the change which has happened probably in last 2 years with the help of these guidelines and everything, that the contracts are robust enough to really articulate like what kind of IP belongs to whom, what kind of data transfers need to happen, if there has to be, let's say, deletion of data that needs to be done. So the partner has to really give those proofs and all that stuff. So it's a very comprehensive contractual agreement that we get into, and that's what CISO defines very clearly. And we ensure while through doing the business or offboarding, it's taken care of. And then there is a final closure where compliance, legal, CISO, CTO, everybody is involved. And that's when we call it basically clean separation of duties or engagement, right? So it's an elaborate process, but once it's defined properly, and I would say in last 2 to 3 years with all these regulations and everything, it has really given us a good control of like what we expect from the partner, and they are obligated to really do it for us.
Gaurav, there's a question coming up saying, can you elaborate a bit more on your third point?
Sure. So let's say, let's take a very simple example, right? Let's say we are doing some business with a digital partner who's storing some data on our behalf while we are doing business. Now, once we say, and then in the real time, let's say we are transferring that data to our systems, or basically there is a process, right? But at the end of, let's say, the business engagement, we might want to ask them to delete all the data, right? So the first thing is, while we are doing the business, we would ensure all the masking and everything happens. But at the end of it, we might want them to just delete all the data footprint, get a confirmation from them, do that audit, and then close the thing, right? Does that answer the question? I don't know who asked.
This is Sainath. So it's okay. I think if there is more, he will ask. Yeah, he said yes. He's
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This is really elaborate and very specific. Yeah. Shashank, quick one. I think you've been rather working with maybe those entities which are entering into middle stage, right? Middle tier. And you've seen a lot of challenges. So how should be the role of a CTO and CISOs in these organizations which are moving from moving to a 1,000+ crores, and then they're suddenly realizing so much of regulations and controls are coming. So what should they do? Because it's very difficult for them to graduate, right?
I think it's a very valid and I'm really happy to be part of this panel discussion with two of the guys I have worked and learned the whole governance and compliance largely. So I think it's becoming a very challenge with especially the NBFCs who's graduating from base layer to middle layer, and certainly the plethora of the regulatory guidelines that they need to adhere to. And many of the places that CTOs are not there, even the CISOs are not there, the guys are there. So typically it has to be driven from the management. And that's where the role of the, I'll talk about the MD or any other senior leader who are responsible to drive the technologies as well as the responsible security is changing. Some of the basic challenges also I'm getting to know and understand from them, that even if we try to build a policies which need to be aligned with the master direction, they find it difficult that how to present it to the board, right? So they're the technology head or the leader who are there finding it very tough to how to explain it to the board that what are the expectations are there. Not it's like the matured organization or the banks or NBFCs or the large fintechs. So these are some of the basic challenges. Then also the lack of the sufficient technologies framework, because they have to rely lots more on the manual processes to comply, be it on the change management or the patch management kind of things. So technology challenges, learning challenges, the procedural challenges that are there, and as well as the resources challenges that being foreseen on the ground with some of these middle layer, especially those who are the early stage of the middle layer. They have just graduated. But yeah, they have started taking that putting the larger management committees or the structure to take the joint responsibility, because they know that they are going through the RBI audit, so they need to demonstrate the compliance. And one thing also I missed out to tell, many of these guys are also rely heavily on the third parties to cater to the technology services. Like many of the times, lots of the like application development maintenance has been outsourced to the third party. So they need to take care of those aspects. So I think management structure, they're trying to build their capabilities, capacities, are also engaging with the third parties to help them into the compliance. So yes, there are lots of challenges, but I think there is learning in the process. I think it will be much better for the guys who are this year, those who will be transitioning. So last year when the guidelines came, and many of those guys who just transitioned to the middle layer, they just face the challenges. But I think the guys who are there at the 800 crore, 900 crore, and then will graduate, I think they will be better prepared to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Vicky, from your perspective, you're saying yesterday when we were chatting, you said that there's a higher risk from insider threats, right? So, and those are, and then of course some issues with partners as well. So, how do you think that institutions to think about these risks which are coming from inside, where the access controls and all can be an issue, and somebody can actually pull data and move out? So, how do you think about that? You're mute, Vicky.
So, Samir, there are two aspects to this. One is, the insider threat from the perspective of what is an act of commission, and the second is what is an act of omission, which is essentially where there is a no malified intention and where there is a malified intention, and both have got a different ways to approach it. If within your system you have a rogue employee who is actually working as a sleeper cell or something like that, it is something which is a very high risk for the organization, and I think such risk exists everywhere. But to actually look at from a framework perspective, what preventive steps the institutions, the financial institutions or other institution can undertake, in my view, there are 3-4 such steps that you can take. First is involving everyone in the whole risk management and in the cybersecurity process in terms of what is in it for me, and where is what and what is the role that you need to play. If we are able to involve everyone in that process, which is starts from a building awareness process, that it creates an enormous amount of risk. That's the first step starts there. Second is about having very stronger process and systems to see that there is an oversight mechanism that is available. No one person could have a complete access. Unfortunately, what happens is many organizations, you will find that passwords are very simple, which are actually kept in an Excel sheet. You would find it in the drawer. You would actually see that there are a lot of such compromises are happening, and such people also download a lot of information or data in their laptops or even in the mobile devices as well. The third area is that some of the very crucial roles, for example, people who need to have the sysadmin or database access kind of a thing, what kind of a privilege access monitoring that is being done, or including the patches etc., which are getting deployed. What is an oversight mechanism? Many organizations, again, you will find that data center is responsible for doing many things, but no third person is actually reviewing some of those patch management reviews etc., and privilege accesses which have been deployed, to what extent they are foolproof etc. or not. And there are tools that are now available where you can actually see what an employee is actually up to during the day in terms of what he is up to, which sites he is accessing, which data he is accessing, he or she is accessing. I'm not saying that we become a policeman, okay, as an organization, because to some extent, how much you would be actually watching over people, but there is a need that one breach or a one click, has actually created catastrophic damage, and it was an act of commission in one of the two of the banks where and the switch was compromised. That it was actually somebody clicked innocently, which is an act of omission because there was no malified intent. They just wanted a free pizza, and 110 rupee or a 20-30 rupees pizza costs some 100 crores to that bank or that institution. So I think accesses have to be properly defined. Access control has to be properly monitored. Whatever updates etc. are happening, They need to be tracked properly, and there has to be an oversight, and a review mechanism has to be picked up. And wherever people have failed some of the audits, etc., or some of the breaches, CTO and the CISO have to actually workshop and see that where we need to bring in tighter controls. Without which, I think the risk is always there, and it is unknown. The quantum of that is very unknown.
I agree. डर सबको लगता है. So it's such a scary one to run the bank. You don't know from where the attack will happen, right? So I think it is scary, and I think if you don't put enough controls, it can go out of control. I think Venki, you're saying something.
No, I was just agreeing with you, and I can tell you some organization instituted a punishment mechanism of monetary penalty if you actually clicked on a link. Okay, I can tell you people were actually there's accounts were debited, but subsequently the same people again clicked on the link because they said कि पहले वाला शायद was I mean a spurious one. The next one I can definitely get a free holiday. Now there is so much of craze for some of these things. I'm sure it is there in our other countries as well, but I can talk about my country. I think that risk is huge, is what I can tell you. It's a huge risk. We need only one person to click.
No, I agree. I agree. And you were saying about the losses, and I can tell you that we all had sleepless nights on those days, right? I think we went through this pain.
Exactly.
Perfect. Perfect. So, Gaurav, this DPDP has come, right? That Data Protection Act has come, and now data is across all the layers, right? With partners, this and that, and then the whole ecosystem. So, how would you think as a CTO, and maybe CTOs are also half CISOs, right? I think all accountability. I always believe that I'm the CISO as well, because if something goes down, I'll have to first go down. So, I think from your thought process perspective, how the banks and NBFCs will tend to deploy this, and sort of what role will CTOs play in this thing, because business will not be able to play a very active role. They will not know what to do with it.
Sure. A couple of things about data specifically, right? So one of the things is there is growing understanding about, as earlier there used to be Chinese walls, etc., right, where businesses were separated and you only got to see data as in you got to know about something only as much as you was required as part of your job, right? So what starts happening is now there is more and more as when we are evaluating some solutions, right? We really question at each point, does data need to be saved? So if not, then don't save it, because the lesser you save it, the better it is. There is lesser cost of compliance for that, right? So what we always evaluate is there are two types of data, one at rest and one in motion, right? So at rest, what you make sure is there is clear list of PII data fields, right? It's available in all kinds of frameworks. So first is you figure out whether you need to store the data or not. If you need to store the data, then it has to be masked, as in that should again be a day zero requirement, not an afterthought, right? Once that is also done, and this relates to the internal threat and everything that was spoken about, right? You ensure that all your systems have a robust role-based access control, RBAC as it's called, right? So you are protecting it. So first, you are basically not proliferating data. Second is you are encrypting that. Third is you are still like putting access controls around it so that people who don't really need to see it really don't have access to it, right? So, and the same thing is applied to the partners. As in partners, let's say if they are providing any services to us, right? Some API calls to validate something. As in these days, CISO actually goes to the extent of really asking for code reviews, etc., to ensure that data is not stored. Right. So if somebody claims that they don't store data, they only process, let's say, connect some other APIs, etc., and then pass back the validations, etc., CISO actually goes and asks for code level validations or reviews as well, right? So as a CTO, it slows down the process a little bit, but then it lets us really innovate faster in the long run, because if you are not sure about your solution, you're always looking back and you're always worried if something will go back. bad, right? So this has always become a day zero kind of a requirement that you evaluate each data point for all these three things. And data in motion has been secure for a while anyways, due to all kinds of encryptions across API layers, etc. Right? So this is generally speaking how we look at the data. Now, to your point, as in earlier, it was totally about functionality and business, and everybody was really keen to think about like whether my functionality is working. Now they always ask this question, and that kind of understanding has gone up. Is my data secure? Will I be able to do business? Because you have seen some recent cases where because of lack of these controls, etc., businesses have been hurt, and in a large way, right? So that's how it goes really, as in data becomes very, very important part of the discussion wherever the functionality is being discussed. And to a large part, actually, I've been part of a few conversations with clients or investors and all those guys, right? And then sometimes I do feel CISO is more needed in those conversations than I am. And the reason for that is because as soon as quickly you run through the functionality and that's done, and they really cut short the discussion and ask, okay, now tell me about your BCP, tell me about your data protection, tell me about how you really prevent all kinds of threats, etc. So sometimes my slide decks have more about those things than real functionality. And that is the state that we are in right now. That's the awareness that exists there. So earlier, it used to be like a fight to really get budgets and everything for these kinds of activities. Now with boards, with clients, with investors, everybody really focused on these aspects of your software solution. It's become very easy conversations. It's just that you need to be sold on it, and for right reasons, of course.
Perfect, perfect. So I think this is good. Maybe what I will try to do is, as we move towards closure, we take few questions from everyone. I think, I don't know if Mahentesh, you were planning to ask a question. If you want, you can go ahead and ask your question as well. Yeah, Mahentesh, you had a question, or anybody has a question, you can raise your hands. Otherwise, I have more questions, so I'll continue. But if there is any, yeah, maybe he's not picking up. Anybody else, Ashish and all, you can sort of raise your hand and we'll make you allow you to speak. Maybe Shashank, a question to you personally is how, I mean, we have seen enough conflicts and you've seen a lot of clients conflicts between a CTO, CISOs, and maybe of course other functions. How is it coming down because of the controls? How do you see it evolving? And if the conflicts arise, because sometimes it is goes ahead and impacts the programs as well. If let's say CISO wins, then maybe the innovation stops, or maybe the business wins, then maybe we have a compliance issue. And CTO wins, I don't know. I just want to get a view on it because we've seen enough conflicts on this side.
No, Sabir, right. As we are working with many of the clients, we continue to see those challenges still there, where that some programs need to go live, and then suddenly some of the requirements will come from the CISO's side, and then suddenly it becomes a showstopper kind of thing. And we see other side of also, as Gaurav was also talking about it, like where that CISO has been rightly involved at the start of the program, right? So when the business requirement is getting documented, CISO or CISO team is stating that what are the requirements are there. And I think things, at least some of the mature organizations is getting shaped, where that some of the checklists, be it from the compliance team, be it from the CISOs, are being shared upfront, right? But many times also what happens that during the programs, things keep continue to change, right? So for example, if you are building the digital journey, initially what the digital journey you might have planned and what kind of the security requirement would have taken, you would have addressed, but during the course of the time, you continue to change your journeys process. But at that time, the security teams has not been involved. And when it comes at the last where the security testing has to be done and the security sign-off need to be taken, and then those surprises comes and then we start becoming a showstopper and also a point of conflict a lot. So those are the challenges continue to be there, and that's where I think the leadership and the top management play a bigger role to facilitate the better alignment between the teams. And typically also I've seen that, like for example, BSG, the teams are there, like business solution groups. There are expertise being put in place who has some good understanding of the security or the compliance requirement, so that at least when there's BSG team is continuing to work with the technologies to drive the transformation, at least the right input of the security is continued to be put in place. And so one thing is, but the CTOs, and I think same comes about the product team, but product team is working closely with the business, and business leadership is also part of this management team. And they also go through this compliance challenges. They know that, okay, those things that need to be taken care of it. So they also don't try to bulldoze many times that, okay, it needs to get through. So they will try to go along with what CISO will suggest that. So I think lots of these changes are taking place, but it's some of the mature organizations are driving it much better, but some of the challenges continue to persist.
No, thank you. Thank you. I think very interestingly, we had a situation where with the client, we created this commonality, got the compliance and security guys upfront in the program. And what they did was very funny, okay? They went ahead and took a exceptional approval from the CEO saying that compliance and security should never come in the initial process because then we'll impact the process. We should come in the control process when the product is finished. And I was like tearing my hair, right? ये कहाँ से आ जाते हैं? कैसे सोचते हैं? So yeah, that program never went live. Okay, don't worry about it. I mean, if the decision making is live, it doesn't go live. But I think with this we conclude. This is a fantastic session. I think we learned from a different perspective, from a security side, from a business side, leadership side, and of course technology side as well. And I'm really thankful to Venki, you and Gaurav, and of course Kiran also joined for a bit for sharing your insights, and Shashank for allowing me to invite get there, because it's not my domain. This is your domain. So thank you everyone. And with this, I hand it over back to Shashank to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Venki sir. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you. So, guys, with this, we come to the end of the sessions. I think it was engaging 3 hours of the sessions where we touched upon the various aspects of the cybersecurity and the risk management, from the role of the board to the changing role of the CTOs and the CISOs. But thanks for patiently listening to us. Don't miss out to share the feedback with us. Your feedback always keeps on motivating us and continue to keep on improving. And we'll also be coming back with our next Digi Dialogue. So be registered for our newsletter. Look at the LinkedIn channels where that you will get the notifications about the next programs. And also, I think my team is sharing the link of our FinTech Grid, which is in our knowledge portals, where the lots of the training modules as well as the recordings of these videos will be available. Text will be available. You can go and register. So team, can you just share that FinTech Grid link? So with that, I think we come to the end. We thank you, everyone. Thanks for patiently listening to us and keep looking forward for our knowledge sessions. And thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.